here downtown by City Hall. Just checking out some nice displays they have of Santa, face painting, train rides. Say hi, Benjamin. We're gonna be getting into a session that I played last night where we actually played with the one and only Santa Claus. And you know, he had some gifts ready for everybody at the table. But Benjamin, say bye-bye. All right, let's jump into that session now. Saturday evening, putting in a night session. Good luck us. What's up, YouTube? The usual ride back home to detail the hands. Let's jump right into it. No point in wasting any time. So as soon as I sit down, I witness a hand I'm not involved in, but I have kind of some commentary on it. I think something that you can learn from. There's a hand where I think there's an open, like the small blind 3 bets, the opener calls. The flop comes like Queen Jack X. I think the 3-better bets the flop. The original opener calls. Turn goes check, check, I think. River is like a 9. Goes check again. And now the guy who calls the 3-bet in position thinks for a bit, bets like 100 and a 300. Again, the small blind tanks for a while and just ends up folding. And he's like, oh, what'd you have, Queen 10? And the guy, like, in late position is like, oh, yeah, like, how'd you know? That's exactly what I had, like, goodery. Like, I don't want to play with you, you know. And then the guy, and here's the thing, the one I want to comment on. The guy in the small blind's like, yeah, I just had a 5. And it seems innocuous, like, you know, it seems like it's not a big deal, like he's just saying what he had, but in my opinion, it kind of comes off as this, like, nervousness, this basic, like, want to be like, yeah, like, all I had was a 5, and I think that's a mistake for a couple of reasons. A, it's showing that you're 3-betting light, which maybe that's your goal, but if that's your goal, why not just, like, show that you know, have a crappy hand? I think it's more him just trying to, like, be, like, you know, a tough guy and be like, oh, yeah, like, I didn't have anything. And also, like, when you're you know, announcing basically that you're 3-betting light, it's giving information to the other players at the table. And again, if that's your goal, then you might as well just table it. So in my opinion, he was just, I don't know, trying to act a little tough and, you know, be like, oh, you know, this is what I had. Like, I didn't have top pair beat anyway, and I'm 3-betting you light. And I don't think there's any need for that. I think you're giving away too much information when you're doing stuff like that. And I bring it up because it's something that I've done before, for sure. It's been a situation where, like, I try to get some information and I'm just like, oh yeah, all I had was bottom pair or whatever. And I don't think it's, you know, needed. You can kind of not have to do that sort of thing. And there's something else that happens later that I feel like kind of another etiquette thing that we'll get into. Anyway, a bit after that, I get moved to main game, at which point I actually meet somebody who's watched the vlog before, Ryan from Australia. Shout out to you. Seemed like a super cool guy. He's visiting California, I believe he said, with his family, his wife, and they're checking out casinos. So it was really nice to meet you, and good luck on your trip. Anyway, as I'm speaking to him, I see that we're playing 3-5-10 in this main game. I opened a 35 in, like, under the gun 2 or under the gun 3 with ace queen offsuit. And now I get 3-bet by my immediate left to 135. Folds back to me. He's playing about 800. It's a guy I've played with before, and it's a guy I know can be, like, loose. Like, I know that he doesn't necessarily just have, like, queens plus here. That being said, this is a hand where I think he's just going to play, like, fairly tough out of position. Get yourself in a lot of, like, reverse applied odds situations. I don't know how he's playing today. It's my, like, first hand. Do I think he's just, like, snap 3-betting me light here? I don't know. And I think it's just a good spot to fold and fight another day. You know, figure out later on, is he tilting, is he doing wild stuff? Because I don't need to get into a situation where I'm gonna, like, punt off. I think he had like $800 or $900. You know, when it comes queen high, I'm not gonna be able to fold because I don't know if he's got kings or if he's got, you know, Jack 10 suited that he wants to lose his mind with. So anyway, I fold, and yeah, then I kind of quickly noticed that there's a player in the game that I've played with before who is fairly wild, likes to drink. I actually find out later on that he was the guy that the floor had cut off from drinking. They've already, as soon as they saw him, I believe they've already made the decision that they're going to only give him, like, a drink an hour based on some situations in the past where he had been drinking too much. So I know I'm ready in for a wild ride. So I don't play any hand for maybe an orbit or two when the Santa Claus player, who is the one that, as I mentioned, has been drinking, he is trying to order another beverage, having kind of an issue with the cocktail server. A, she doesn't really understand him, and B, I don't think she's trying to let him order or drink really. And so the players are trying to let him know that it's on him. And he ends up just, like, saying, make it 25. I'm not 100% sure whether he's looked at his cards or not. I believe that he likely hasn't, from what I've been paying attention to, but I'm not, like, 100% sure that he hasn't looked. The Player to his immediate left calls. I think there might be one more caller, but I don't remember. I look down at king, queen, offsuit on the button. And this is the spot that I want to be isolating. I'm pretty sure the guy who's drinking under the gun is opening dark. The player to his left doesn't necessarily have to have a great hand. It seems fairly capped if he himself isn't 3-betting. So I want to be 3-betting. And if I'm going to be 3-betting, it's not going to be some like standard sizing. I want to go large. I want to isolate. I want to pick up this dead money. And I don't want to just pick up some stragglers, you know, if I make it like $90 or something like that. So I make it 150. Now the small blind player, who is the player that had 3-bet me like an orbit or two before, cold calls fairly quickly out of the small blind. The player under the gun, now I think that the player after him folds out of turn. Or actually, no, he's already saying that he wants to like show his hand. Basically, he's like, you know, I'm going to be folding, I'm folding. Like, are we playing deuce 7 here? And then he's like, I fold, but he's holding on his cards. The player to his left folds, and now he tables his 7 deuce suited, saying, you know, oh, like, you know, are we playing 7 deuce? You know, the table then lets him know that there is still action pending that the player to my left had called. He apologizes. So I guess he had looked at his hand quite likely and decided to open with 7 deuce suited. So yeah, obviously he's getting spicy and out of line. The player to my left, after calling the 150, leaves himself with 400 behind. So we've got about 350, 380 in there, approximately. I don't remember, like I said, if there was 1 or 2 limpers, or 2 or 3 limpers, but playing with basically a 1 SPR. So it's quite likely I'm just never really folding, unless it comes like ace high and you just open jams or something like that. Now, my read of the situation is, given his snap call pre-flop, I think it's quite likely that he has a small to medium pocket pair, something in the range of like 7s, 8s, 9s, maybe even 10s. I think that if he had queens plus, he is just going to be 3-betting here, or I mean, I guess 4-betting, but in my mind, it's kind of like a 3-bet because the guy opening into the gun, I think it was fairly obvious that he hadn't looked. Because of how deep he's playing, again, I just think that he's going to be getting it in with queens plus. Similarly, if he has ace king, I think he's just going to be getting it in. I don't expect him to be cold calling 150 with a 400 behind, and not just be getting that in pre. So my read of the situation is he's got like the middling pocket pairs. As I mentioned, he had a stack of about 800 or 900 when I sat. So I get the feeling now that he's got like 550, he's losing. I don't know how much he's in for, but I'm fairly sure he's losing. And as I mentioned, I think he's a thinking player, but he's a bit spewy. So that's my read of the situation. The flop ends up coming 10-8-4 rainbow. Oh, sorry, 10-8-4 with 2 clubs. I have the king or the queen of clubs. I don't remember anymore, but I remember that I had one or the other. He checks. I'm going to be c-betting here, basically my entire range. I don't want to be checking back here, making it look like I have ace king high. I think when I check back here, as I mentioned in a previous vlog, I am going to look a lot like I have exactly pocket 10s or ace king. There'd be no real reason for me to check this back unless I had specifically pocket 10s or maybe aces. But even aces, I'm just likely to be down betting. So I'm going to be essentially betting my whole entire range. So the question is, what sizing? I think if I go too big, it's going to look a lot like I have ace king, and I might get called off by the, you know, like I said, the 7s and 9s, if he does have that. So I want to think of like the perfect sizing. Similarly though, if I bet too small, I don't want to get jammed on and I have to essentially call it off with what I expect to be likely 2 overs and a backdoor straight, backdoor flush draw. We're now pretty much getting priced in. So after thinking about it for a bit, I decided to bet 110. My thinking being that I don't want to be betting too large again because I don't think that those are ever going to get the 7s and 9s to fold, because I wouldn't really be doing that if I had like queens plus. I'm not going to bet pot here with queens plus. It's just obviously not what I'm going to be doing because I'm trying to get called by what his most likely range looks like. So I bet 110, and in my mind, I was pretty likely to just call off the jam if he does jam for about 270, 280 more, getting that price. Sure enough, he calls, which is what I expected him to do, because I think it looks quite likely like I have the queens plus in this scenario, and that's what I would be betting. So I'm likely to be jamming essentially all turns that aren't a 7 or a 9, because a 7 or 9 I think will make him likely sets, and if not making him a set, it's going to make him the open-enders, right? If he has 7s, the 9 gives an open-ender. If he has 9s, the 7s would give him an open-ender, and those hands I think are just never check folding. They're just going to check call off here. So the turn is now a queen, obviously Yahtzee. At this point, I have the best hand, and he checks once again. I think I made a little bit of a mistake here in that I thought, you know, May had the best hand. I want to protect, and I just decided to essentially put them all in. I think I bet like 280, maybe like 285, something like that. My idea went back to I'd be betting on the jack, the queen, or the king, or the ace all in anyway. So I want to be doing that with what my range is anyway. I'm hoping that maybe he's still going to put me on ace-king. That's going to pick up equity, because like I said, if I did have ace-king and the turn's queen, I would be jamming here. I'm not checking back, trying to realize I am trying to still get some folds from his middling pocket pairs. So I like to kind of stick with that story that, you know, I would be still jamming, hopefully get a crying call from those pairs that are just like, I think you have ace-king high. So I jam it in there, and he does fold. He says something along the lines of like, I think that queen hit him. He ended up making a good read that, you know, that the queen hit me, that I guess he expects me to have a range of like ace-queen, ace-king, king-queen suited, stuff like that. Maybe I just gave it off. I'm not really sure. But he did make a good call. And the question being, should I be checking back this turn? You know, trying to essentially give him the free card. I don't really love it, because now, you know, I'm allowing the chance for like an ace or king to come off. At one point, he's never calling off with his middling pocket pairs that I believe that he has, right? So I kind of take that chance if I check back to hit those cards that are going to prevent him from calling it off. But similarly, you know, let's say the river's like a 3 or pairs the board or something like that, and he checks and now I jam. I wouldn't take this line very likely as a bluff. You know, taking the bet line, because I'm just so likely to get called off by all pairs. So I think I just have to jam here with my entire range as played. So we get that one through, and we pick up a pot to get up maybe like, I don't know, $300-400. Now, I've been probably playing for over an hour. I don't think I've like put any money in any real pots of any significance for an hour. Maybe there's like a couple of hands where I raise and just like with flops and give up. So I think I have a fairly tight image. The Santa Claus limps for 10 in early position. I have 10 deuce suited, and I decided I'm just gonna be like trying to play pots with him. He's complaining that people are playing too tight, and when you have a fun player, you know, you want to mix it up, whether it be raising, having him call, and then checking it down and showing that I 10 deuce, whatever. You want to show that you're not being the nit at the table. I think this is quite important when you have an action player, especially one that's complaining about how tight everyone's playing. So I make it 35. We pick up a hitchhiker in middle position who is probably, you know, the other best player at the table. He actually recently chopped the big tourney at the casino for like 100K. He calls out of, I think, the smaller big blind. I think he's going to have a fairly strong range here consisting of pocket pairs. I think he's fairly capped. I don't expect him to have like queens plus here. I do think that those would be 3-betting, but maybe they wouldn't, because they do want to allow the action player into the pot. That's what I'd be doing with really good hands here, because he knows if he 3-bets me, I'm likely to fold all my trash, and now he prevents this action player to get into the pot. So he flats, and now the Santa Claus player calls as well. We go 3 ways to a flop of ace, 10, 9, rainbow. They both check. I have second pair here. I'm going to try to get to showdown. Obviously, my hand benefits from betting to deny equity from like pair and gutters, but I'm not sure those would be folding anyway. I'm really not going to be betting too large. I guess I could try to go multi-street bluff here because I do have the range advantage, but I like to just try to you know, get to as cheap a showdown as possible. I believe I actually have a backdoor flush draw as well. The turns the 10 of diamonds, bringing 2 diamonds. Yahtzee, I make trips. There's a check from the player in the blinds, and now Santa Claus bets $15. Obviously a pretty slam dunk raise, except I might have mentioned in a previous vlog my thoughts on this situation. I think when I don't bet this flop and raise this turn, my hand's gonna look exactly like a 10. It's just super obvious that I'd be playing hands like 10 jack, queen 10, king 10 in this manner. And so when I raise here, it's always going to be that. I don't think it'd be as a bluff. It's just not a line I would take as a bluff. In previous situations, I've talked a lot about how when I raise the river, I never really get any credit when I take a line that doesn't make any sense. So I like to just call here, keep ranges wide, and hope that I get a brick river, so that if he does bet the river or I bet, it's just going to look like I have a lot of missed draws. Like I'm not going to really be representing any particularly strong value hands. So I call 15. And now the player in the blinds calls as well. We go 3 ways to a river, which I think is like a 3. It's just some non-connecting, or actually, sorry, it does make one hand. It's an offsuit 6, so 7-8 does get there, but it's not a hand I'm particularly concerned about with. It's possible. Now the player in the small blind checks. I don't think he's ever really got 7-8 here unless it's like 7-8 suited, but I think maybe he would turn that into a bluff by leading this turn, as it is a good range card for him. So he checks. And now Santa Claus bets $5. When he bets his $5, I think, you know, sometimes it's going to be to induce a bluff, but I think it's way more likely to be some ace-x hand. Obviously, I'm going to be raising for value. And again, it's just going to look a lot like when he bets 5, I'm trying to bluff him. I like to make it 105, just like a quick bet. Add, you know, a $100 chip to the 5. I think maybe I could size up even larger. The pot in this instance is like 150-ish, something like that. So I think I could size up a little bit larger. But, you know, I think that this is like a great sizing to kind of look bluffy, get looked up by an ace. The player in the blinds folds. And now Santa Claus asks me to show a card. I'm kind of in a bad situation where I can't show a card. Obviously, I can't show the 10 for trips. And if I show a deuce, like, would I ever show a deuce if I didn't have exactly a 10? Like, I'd be out of my mind. At this point, I believe he's already shown me that it is ace-8 of diamonds. So on the turn, he had top pair and the nut flush draw. So I got a bit lucky. Obviously, if I raise his turn, he's not folding, but I'm not sure if he's paying off on the river. Maybe he's calling off anyway. He kind of had the perfect exact hand to maybe obviously call a raise on the turn and maybe even call a bet on the river. Maybe he just jams turn, quite possibly. So maybe I could have gotten it all. But, you know, them's the breaks. How am I supposed to know that he's going to be that strong? Anyway, he thinks for a bit, and, you know, because I can't show him anything, I decided to just keep quiet. It thought crossed my mind to show him a deuce, but I just can't do that. Once he shows me ace-8, like, if I show him a deuce, like, I have to have 10 deuce, even as unlikely as it would be. But he ends up calling because it's a line where he can't fold, right? When he takes this line with ace-8, he can't fold. He's essentially induced the bluff. He's got what he wanted, so he can't fold. And the way I played the hand, it doesn't look like I have ever 10. So, yeah, it kind of goes to show how trapping in these spots is really does behoove you, because people just never really put you on a hand. So we got quite lucky there, got a little bit of a payoff, although, you know, because of his exact hand, probably could have played a much bigger pot if I just raised the turn. Back home now, I have a couple of other things to detail before we end this video. Santa Claus once again limps for 10. I look down at queen 3 of diamonds in the cutoff. I elect to once again try to isolate him. I make it $40. Again, you know, trying to give him some action. He's been complaining. He's been losing. He's stacked off another, I think, 1,000 or 2,000. He's gone in the cage and now been gone for quite some time in between this, maybe missing probably for 30 minutes. So he's gone probably to an ATM or to the bank to get some extra money, maybe a cash advance on his credit card, because I believe he now has a couple of extra 1,000. He's stacked off 1,000 and then ended up reloading quickly for another 1,000. He's asking if everybody wants to play bigger. So, you know, trying to give him that action. We open a 40, the button calls, I believe the big blind or straddle calls, and he calls. We're going 4 ways to a flop, which comes queen, jack, deuce, rainbow. There is one diamond, so I flop top pair with my queen 3 of diamonds and a backdoor flush draw. Goes check, check. I elect to decide to want to bet here. Obviously, I could put this in my check back range, as it's kind of difficult to get called by worse, but there are just various straight draws here. We have 10-9, king-10, ace-10 for gut shots. I don't want to be giving a free card here to some of those gut shots. I like to bet a half pot of $80. Also, if I check back here, I'm going to have a tough time. If the player in position bets, am I going to call down 3 streets? I'm going to look fairly capped, which I kind of am. So I decide that I want to just put out a bet and essentially see where I'm at. If I get check raise here, I think it's a fairly easy fold. Because obviously I don't necessarily have a capped range here when I bet this flop. So I bet 80, goes fold, fold, and now Santa Claus calls. Essentially the perfect situation, exactly what I wanted. The turn is the 4 of diamonds, so now I pick up a diamond draw. The board is queen, jack, deuce, rainbow. Turns the 4 of diamonds. We have queen 3 of diamonds for top pair, no kicker, and the flush draw. He checks. I like to check it back. I'm not sure I can really be going for 3 streets here. I think if I check back this turn, he might lead some rivers, because it's going to look a lot like I have maybe a hand like ace-king, ace-10, king-10 that's trying to get the showdown and realize my equity. So I check it back, and the river's a queen, essentially the perfect card. He now leads for 200. Question is, can I raise for value? I don't think so. Maybe if he ends up having exactly like ace-jack, a king-jack, he'll call a raise. But I think, again, my hand, like, I wouldn't be taking this line as a bluff. I think my hand's going to just look a lot like I have a queen. And I think he's going to have a lot of air balls here as played. Like, I think he's either going to have a better queen or he's just going to have nothing anyway. So I like to call, and sure enough, he quickly kind of just flashes me upwards that he's king 3 for king 3 high because he doesn't want to table it. I table my hands. And we're seeing that he's obviously getting extremely spicy here, calling this flop with king 3 of clubs. I'm not even treated a backdoor flush draw. So I think he just really wanted to get wild against me. And you know, we gave him that by essentially giving him the rope by checking back this turn. So yeah, clearly we have a guy that's willing to get out of line. At this point, I think he's a bit upset that he's losing, wants to play bigger. He's trying to get everyone to play bigger. He says he wants to play 5-10, which we essentially are. So we're trying to understand, does he want to play 5-10-20? Does he just want to uncap it? Because obviously we can just tell him to like add on chips. No one's going to mind. But it's obviously like a toxic situation because everybody wants to play with this guy. But at the same time, we don't really know how to appease him, it's kind of the gross part of playing live No Limit Hold'em when you have this action player. It's the whole table is trying to make him happy. There was an interesting situation in which a new guy to the table, fairly new to the table, gets involved in a hand with him where he calls off with like top and bottom on a 3-diamond board against this guy, against Santa Claus, where on the river, nothing really changes on the board. Santa Claus shows him a 5 and is like, can you beat the 5? The guy has king 5, so he only loses to ace 5 really, or a slow roll. And he's like, turn your hand over, I called you. And Santa Claus just ends up having 7-5 offsuit for just a pair of 5s. Like he has just a bluff that he tried to get through, and he gets pissed off. So a word of the wise, we ended up telling the guy after Santa Claus went for a reload, like, hey man, like that's the guy you don't want to get mad at. And he's like, well, how am I supposed to know? He's like, he could have a flush. I'm like, well, he can't have a flush. He's already showed you that he's a 5. And Santa Claus was even like, well, if you think I'm slow rolling you, like, sure, but I'm not slow rolling you. So yeah, whenever you have this, like an action player, try to do your best to just appease him. If the guy is going to show you a card and say like, you're good, I just have a 5, just show your hand. Like if he ends up slow rolling you, yeah, that sucks, but it's kind of what you have to do when you believe someone's an action player. The guy even says afterwards, like, yeah, I called him because he was so talkative. I'm like, well, yeah, if you get the read that, he's wild, when the guy just shows you bottom pair, just table your hands. Don't try to like piss the guy off. So that's kind of one thing. Anyway, so he's battling, trying to get us to get 5-10-20 going. They won't start that unless we move the table. We can't just do that because there's actually a list. So a weird situation occurs where they start a game. We can't all get into it. He's waiting. He ends up like running to it, which then none of us have gone because other players are going. We all like agree we'll roll and not take the game, but then he runs to it anyway. A situation happens where now it's like this gross spot where like, the only reason this game is running is because of him, and he's now run away. So I see there's a seat open. I run over, put some chips down, trying to figure out what the heck is going on. He ends up then going for a walk, claiming that he thinks he's missing a couple $1,000. The whole situation is extremely weird. He takes his seat eventually, and I just decide, like, you know what, I'm up $750. I don't need to put myself in a gross spot. I know I'm already kind of in that locked up mindset. It's like 12:30. I'm going to be watching the kids tomorrow because my wife has to go into the office on a Sunday, no less. So yeah, I decided to lock it up. Don't put myself in this extremely predatory environment where I'm essentially just chasing him because he's the action player. Yeah, it's unfortunately kind of like the situation when it comes to these things. Like, there's not that many crazy players, and when they are there, like, everyone tries to do everything to appease them, and you end up feeling pretty gross when you're essentially chasing them around. That's just unfortunately the nature of the beast. You try to be as accommodating and kind as you can, but at the end of the day, you're trying to play the game and win the money. So yeah, anyway, ended up booking a win of, I think, $729. Another like $700 win. I think that's like 3 700-ish wins in a row. Yeah, maybe that's the good luck number. Who knows? I'm happy. Great for us. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Obviously we had two pretty interesting hands here with the 10 deuce and the queen 3 suited that worked out well in my favor. They could have blown up in my face, obviously. But I think, when you find the key takeaway from this vlog is when you find yourself in a situation where someone's being action, you want to give them action. Even if you end up losing a pot, the situation is such that you should be the one that's playing better. Even if I whiff here and fold, maybe I get to a situation where I show it down, maybe he bets and I get to just table my hand and show him that I'm isolating him with queen 3 suited, show him that I'm giving him action. I think that's kind of important, especially when you have a guy that's trying to have fun, he's trying to have drinks, trying to elicit action from everybody at the table. That's when you kind of need to mix it up with those guys. That's all for now. Thanks for watching the vlog, and catch you guys later. Say bye, Benjamin. Say bye-bye. Say bye-bye.